Hello, welcome to the Basketball Soapbox. I'm your host, Daniel Daly. Thank you for joining me right before Christmas, right before the holidays. I was sick last week, so I didn't get to talk on a couple of topics, but I'm going to talk on a couple of topics right here, right now. Um, I'm going to be talking about the Draymond Green suspension that happened right when I got sick, so I wasn't able to talk about that, as well as a look to the NBA Christmas Day games, which is always awesome. Can't wait for that time of the year. It's usually a good checkpoint for the middle, for the first part of the season, to look back and look ahead at the games here. But first, I'm going to start talking about Ja Morant and his return to the NBA. Ja Morant has suffered a 25-game suspension, of course, for showing firearms. On IG Live, um, content detrimental to the league, suspending him 25 games. Adam Silver laid that out, and Ja Morant has been gone for 8 months. And he returned on Tuesday night against the New Orleans Pelicans, first game in 8 months. The Grizzlies season is basically down in the crapper at that point. 6-19. Marcus Smart is hurt. Steve Adams is out. Brandon Clark is out for the year. Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane are left to carry this team of what's left and have just been struggling, especially on the offensive end, which has been a pretty difficult thing to navigate without your star point guard franchise player who gets around nearly 30 a game. So Ja Morant coming back to basically kind of save the day. And we're glad that he's back because after all those court proceedings that happened just a week prior, you're having lawyers tell him to pass the ball in court and demonstrate how to pass a ball. There was another I believe it was a prosecutor telling him to directly punch her in the face. And after seeing all that, I'm just like, yo, just get this guy back to basketball where he belongs and get him to play again, especially for Memphis Grizzlies, a small market team that desperately needs his star power and have been to the playoffs the past, 3 seasons, ever since the bubble season, have been able to get to the playoffs above 500 team. And right now, everything is not looking good for the Memphis Grizzlies. But there is a ray of hope here with Ja Morant coming back in that game on Tuesday. That team was down as much as 24 points against the New Orleans Pelicans, against Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. And it looked like it was going to be a blowout. And I was about to turn off the game. But then I tried to give myself, especially in this day and age where threes are prevalent and comebacks happen all the time, I tried to give myself a little bit more way of the third quarter. And that's what I did. And the Memphis Grizzlies mounted a comeback led by Ja Morant, coming back in that game from 24 down. And you couldn't have written it any better. Him hitting a game winner at the end to get the 115-113 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans. And you couldn't have written it any better. Ja Morant getting 34 points there to end the game, 27 points in the second half. And it just reminded me of that Brandon Roy game. I believe it was 2011. I believe the Dallas Mavericks were up on the Blazers, and Brandon Roy came in and just came back and just had a crazy performance. He was coming back from injury, kind of saving that series a little bit for the Blazers. They still lost in 6, but him coming back and giving a little momentum and a little boost to the Portland Trail Blazers, who were desperately in need of him way back. Go check for that game. Brandon Roy, injury sucking part of the game of basketball, and Brandon Roy was one of those people that in basketball that was taken too soon from his career. But just having that type of aura to Ja Morant's return and performance on the first night back, missing 25 games, your team under 500, your team is not healthy against this New Orleans team that's been kind of tough on the season. To come in just fresh off like that and to give his team a ray of hope. You know what I mean? And that's really what all it is right now for the Memphis Grizzlies with Ja Morant, and him coming back. Secondly, he came back against the Indiana Pacers, him and Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton has been tearing up the league this year, especially with that in-season tournament run. They've been struggling after that, but that was a good game, a good test for them to come back in and to see Ja Morant go up against another young star in the league. And to do that, Ja Morant just comes in and scores 20 points. Maybe the adrenaline wore off for him in that game. But over the first 2 games for Ja Morant, he's averaging 27 points, 8 assists, 5.5 rebounds a game. And that's right around where his averages were last year. And just to think about Ja Morant's star power and the impact that he has on the Memphis Grizzlies, he changes their offense. They're dead last in the league in offense, and they're a top 10 defense. So the story of that has just been the Memphis Grizzlies struggling with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson carrying that offense, even though those guys are producing, the rest of the team really can't. That creator for them is not there. That guy that draws two isn't really there. And now Ja Morant's returning to that. Maybe the Memphis Grizzlies can find some type of hope here on the second, heading into the second half of the season. There's 55 games left. And to think, I was talking with some guys and they were like, I don't think they can make the playoffs. And I'm like, I would have believed that in past years, but because of the play-in tournament where teams usually just win 35 to 40 games, right around that edge there, they would have to go 27 and 28 the rest of the way. So that's just under 500. They're already up 2-0. So there's optimism there for Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies for me, because I just think that he's that impactful. And for him to get, nearly 30 points a game, even if it's around 20 plus points a game on this point in the season, that's a big plus for the Memphis Grizzlies, who is still a top 10 defense, even without Steven Adams, without Brandon Clark. For Ja Morant to come back and give a shot in the arm to that offense is going to be something that's very, 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 very good for the Memphis Grizzlies, I think. And I think I give them a shot, even in a tough Western Conference right now, where they're probably, dead last, just above the Spurs, I believe. I'm just pulling up their record here. Yes, they are third from the bottom there. They're only a couple games back. The Phoenix Suns are now 500. They lost tonight against the Kings here tonight, 120-105. But when you're looking at this Memphis Grizzlies team, who are they going to knock out? I give them a chance, at least to give themselves a chance, even in this tough Western Conference, which has been hampered by injuries. When you look at the Clippers, you look at the Pelicans, you look at the Mavericks, who are dealing with some injuries. The Lakers have also dealt with some injuries. The Phoenix Suns, of course, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant haven't even played a game together. And when they did, Bradley Beal got hurt. So looking at this weird Western Conference, even with the Golden State Warriors, there's still a chance there where the Memphis Grizzlies can make a push and get to the play-in. At least 35, 40 wins. That's where I'm looking at. Hopefully go 27 and 28 on the rest of the season, looking at it from that standpoint. But I'm giving them a chance to get in there. And looking at what they've got to go up against in the Western Conference, it's been a tough road, navigating without Marcus Smart for, I believe he only played 11 games, so he's missed 16 games on the season for the Memphis Grizzlies. Hopefully he comes back soon, and this team can really start looking like themselves, even without Steven Adams and Brandon Clark, who there's no timetable on time to return at this point. But looking at what Ja Morant's bringing back to the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm giving them a chance. And the NBA needs Ja Morant, because that's a guy in a small market that's bringing more eyes to the game. And the way he carries himself, that team carries themselves, and you can see with the game winner, the picture that I have right there, that they're very happy to have him back. Very happy to have him back. But moving on here, let's talk about